Hi, I'm Mark, producer of Roundtable, the TV series born here in New York City at the legendary Manhattan Neighborhood Network Studios. The exchange of ideas is important, and that is why we bring to you the following presentation. Please watch.
Good evening and welcome to Single Shot Show at Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Tonight we will be talking about a very peculiar side of photography, in some ways very exciting and very important, in other ways pretty ugly and pretty painful, about documentary war photography. And in order to discuss it, we invited our guest from Ukraine originally, who participated in the war conflict that is still going on in Ukraine, Ivan Rodichenko. Hello, Ivan. Thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your quite unusual, especially for us New Yorkers from one of the most peaceful cities on the planet, experiences. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how it all began. As I understand, the change in your life that actually brought you into the war conflict was in a way sudden and not something you expected to do with your life.
Yeah, I have a difficult story, when a war started in Ukraine, everything is changing for us. Before the war, and I was in Ukraine. I was a very famous producer. I worked in a nightclub with famous Ukrainian, Russian, American artists. I do a lot of parties. But then war started in Ukraine, and when war started, and I was here in the United States, and I think about stay here or go back to Ukraine. I have a decision. This was a very difficult decision for me, because my parents they said stay here because in US you be in the safe, but I can stay away from this situation because a lot of my friends going to the volunteers battalions, and I'm made it a decision. I buy a ticket and go back to Ukraine, and then I'm joined to the volunteer battalions, and start fighting for Ukrainian freedom.
Oh, that's quite a big decision to take.
Yes,
it's definitely a serious choice of conscience to come and join something so dangerous and so.
Yeah, I never think in my life one day I be on the battlefield, and when I saw a lot of ugly things.
So what you interfaced in reality there was quite different probably from what you was imagining when you was making this decision.
Yes.
Did you ever consider that was probably a little too much, or you still was believing that it was the right thing to do?
I think it was right things, because I help people. I bring a lot of stuff from my soldiers because I have good connection in business, and when war started, soldiers or volunteers soldiers, they don't have equipment. And when I came first time to the battalion and I saw they have just they have nothing, absolutely. No military equipment, no protective vest, no helmets. And I'm asked, guys, how you going to the war without equipment and everything? Because when was President Yanukovych before the war, he absolutely destroyed Ukrainian army. And they don't have nothing, and I'm thinking, okay, I should to help, and I'm bring a lot of equipment, a lot of good stuff for my platoon. I start to support, I start to help them.
Well, so as I understand, your main involvement in a process was actually related to supplying.
Yeah, the main, because I had a lot of connection in Ukrainian diaspora in US. I work it in business, and I have a lot of connection, and I bring a lot of equipment.
And that's probably why you had a chance to travel a lot and see different parts of basically the battlefield and the conflict, and that's where this extensive collection of the photographs came from, I presume, from the fact that you was traveling throughout the whole front.
Yeah, because I'm to know is because I worked a lot of time in show business, and I'm art man, and I did a lot of picture because I wanna save this picture for my children's, for the future. This is Ukrainian history, and this was very important to show this picture for the futures.
Interesting. So how that part of the project began, photographing and documenting began? You had any specific goal, or you basically just started to take pictures?
I just started to take a picture. I found very interesting very interesting situation, and very not standard pictures. When I came the first time to the battlefield, and I made a picture. I saw how the tank he parked nearby the church, and children play the ball nearby this tank. As this picture was for me amazing, because I'm said, oh my god, church, the tank, children play football. It's like a surrealism, and I think, oh my god.
It's very powerful imagery, and that's one of the very interesting parts of how people actually perceive the war. A lot of the time people don't realize in what horror they actually live. Only when you look from the outside you realize a lot of things that people don't even notice. There are a lot of people who live every day in the area where people shoot, and they have no choice but to cope with it.
Yeah,
just basically continue their normal life, even if they hear shooting almost every day, and that's probably one of the very vivid ways of depicting it.
It's terrible things, and this is absolutely very difficult things, and I saw a lot of bad things, and how people live in the city where they shooting at each other, conflict, and it's very difficult how they alive and in this situation. But I spoke with a lot of people who live there in the conflict zone, and they said me, okay, this is our life. The after months they like, okay, we live, and we don't leave our houses. We wanna stay here. This is our land. We wanna live here, and this is terrible, because I saw how little children live in this bad condition for living, and how terrible when the adult people, adult men kill each other, and where the children's woman, and they use this like a hostage. This is
yeah.
amazing, and I don't understand in my life. I don't understand the modern war, how we can fight in the city where there live civil people. And for me, it was very upsetting when I saw how many people die.
No, that's
Both sides. This is, for me, it was very terrible.
well, that's unfortunately indeed one of the ugliest faces of the modern warfare. If even in the 20th century, in the first half of it, if there is a war, there is an army against the army. They had a battle. One of them moved forward, another one fell back. That's pretty much it. But right now there are quite a few conflicts where war is just staying there for years, for decades. Afghanistan would be another example. In Moldova, this area that refusing their sovereignty over them is another one.
Do you know why? And I did a lot of picture because first I wanna show this picture to people what I saw, and then I thinking what I should do in my life, and I start to write book. Today I'm writing the book about this is story about the man from show business to the battlefield. This is like my story, and I want to describe in this book what I saw in the battlefield. And this picture I want to use in this book. This is why, this is why.
Let's talk about your book after this quick break.
Yeah, after this, yeah.
This is Alex IG from Single Shot with the next single trick. Today we're going to be talking about uneven lighting. More often you have to deal with just one strong source of light. The strongest one, of course, would be the sun. And when it happens, half of your object is lit very brightly and another half is very dark, just like my face right now. Is there anything you can do about it? Sure. You can have professional lighting equipment, you can have professional light bouncing screens and many other things. But the simplest and easiest thing you can use, especially if you're doing it in a casual environment, is a regular piece of paper. Put it right against the direction of light and you will get the source of light balanced and your light being just right. Alright, we're back, and before the break you was talking about the book you're preparing to be published.
Yeah.
As I understand about your journey from being a promoter, and as I understand you also had some affiliation with political life of Ukraine as well before it all started, right?
Yeah.
And basically to a supplier of the army and a volunteer. So can you tell me a little more about
this
the
book is the main character. He is a promoter.
Mm-hmm.
He is from New York. He is a rich guy. He have a nightclub,
Mm-hmm.
and then one day he saw the news and on the CNN, and then he looked like in his country started war in Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
and he called to his friend to Ukraine, and his friend said, "I'm going to the army," and all people go to the army. Right now we have a war. And this guy, promoter, he decided to go to Ukraine, sell his nightclub, and give this money to the battalion, support his country, because he in his life he's like look like a bad guy. He have girls, everything, but he thinking about his right things he do in his life all day, because he have everything, but he lost himself. Money, luxury, party, alcohol, drugs, everything. And then he joined to the battalion. He go to Ukraine and start to support battalion and starting fighting for Ukrainian freedom. And this book will be about this guy who tried to find himself across the war, love, and then he come back.
Sounds like a pretty exciting project.
Yeah. This is my story because I'm from show business.
I presume it's just based on your story,
yeah,
but the personality doesn't sound like what you are.
Yeah. It's based absolutely. This is what I saw on the battlefield. This is what I feel. This is book about love, about understanding love in our direction in our life, what we should do, and it's the right things, where the right things, where the bad things.
Well, the right and wrong is
about the war.
Exactly. Well, the right and wrong is the most complicated part of what we're dealing with in our lives, and indeed, when you are part of the conflict,
I think our life. This is adventure, and we all try to find ourselves in entire world. It's very difficult and complicated to understand who you are. And I think when I was in the club and working club, and I think one day I should do something more than just be a promoter. And I'm feeling this. I don't know how, but I think I should do something more. And then one day I'm joined to the battalion, and I help people. I help a lot of guys. I help a lot of people who was without equipment. They was young guys. I know they go to the battlefield and they can die without protective vest, without the helmets.
Naturally.
And I buy this. I bring investment for, and I do good. I think I do right things. I help my country. I help my soldiers fighting for the freedom, for our freedom,
Wow. Yes,
for Ukrainian freedom. And
indeed, preserving lives in any way it's done, it's the right thing. There is no doubt and no question about it. But since we went into this direction, it's actually a very interesting question. I wouldn't call your photography specifically journalist photography. It's more like, if I may call it, witness photography, because you was participating in the process and your purpose wasn't to document it. It was actually basically you saw it
this picture,
and you recorded
it.
it.
It's very this picture I did use a lot of different media, and this is, we can say, maybe this is a professional picture, because this is picture I sent to the magazine, and they put this picture. And
don't get me wrong, I wasn't talking about the quality of the pictures. They're actually very high quality, very well photographed. No, I'm not saying anything about that. I'm talking about intent. When a journalist is coming into the war zone, one of the biggest premises, at least theoretically, they come in there exclusively to look, report, and not to participate, to stay unrelated to the conflict. It never happens like this. Maybe you remember this famous Soviet song about journalists, about going around with Leica, block note, and sometimes with a machine gun. So indeed, theoretically, journalist is unrelated, but it's never like this. There is always an angle. But in your case, you specifically was affiliated with the point of view of one of the sides of the conflict. You actually came there with an intent to help one of the sides. That's why I believe there is a distinction between what a regular journalist in the war zone does and what your project was doing. It's more of a witness eye of somebody who actually have an opinion and illustrates this opinion from what they see. And that brings us to the very interesting and philosophical question. How to actually show your point of view through photographs, but at the same time to still tell the truth, because we both know it's really easy to lie with a photograph. I mean, it's done every day. Every other week we hear in the news about one of the photographs actually being staged or not reflecting the reality of the situation. I do believe that your work's actually reflecting the reality of the situation, maybe with...
Yeah, the reality, I respect journalists and a photographer who is involved, exactly involved with a platoon, who work with, and he can show the photo after. And if you know famous movie with Mel Gibson, We Were Soldiers.
Yes, of course.
It's a very famous movie, and if you remember a moment when journalists they was in the hard battlefield, and this commander was one journalist, and he take machine gun and start to fighting with soldiers, one photographer, but then commander said him, put this gun down, you should made the picture, be save the story, you should save the story. And he start put the machine gun and start to make a picture. And this is real journalist, this is real, like, who can be involved exactly with soldiers to understand. This is hard who work exactly in the war zone. This is a very high risk work in this area for the photographer or for journalist, but if you do this stuff like a professional, you should be with platoon and work with platoon. Go to the...
Actually, the commander of this journalist platoon was more of a journalist according to the traditional journalism. They actually expected not to be involved in the conflict, and in exchange for that, they actually allowed by both sides to actually be traveling around the conflict. But we will have a few minutes to conclude this conversation after the break. Today I will be talking about depth of field, so if you're familiar with the concept you can move on to the next episode. But if you're not, I'm often asked how the aperture works besides just controlling how much light gets into a camera and how light or dark your image is. And in simple words, the larger your opening of the aperture is, the smaller will be distance on which your camera is focused. And if you would photograph something like this branch with the open aperture, you will get the image that is focused only on the certain distance, something like this. But if you close it all the way down and take the same picture, you will get the almost the whole plane, everything like this, to be in focus. And in one case you will get more focused attention of the viewer on a specific part of your photograph. Alright, we have only a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to ask you to share with us a little bit about everyday life of a person who is photographing a conflict like this. Basically, how do you survive, what you have to avoid, what you actually need to do to stay alive and still get a good picture.
Do you know, you should have like a luck. It's very important.
That's a start of it.
Yeah, you should have a luck. But do you know it's very important to use equipment, protective vest for journalists, everything, and be with platoon, and very important to listen commander who's about the command, you stay here, or like no rush, not try things like I want to make a photo here, because in the battlefield we have a lot of snipers, and if you close to the area, like in a front line, it's very dangerous.
Indeed.
In everywhere in the military zone, it's everywhere is dangerous, because you have everywhere mine.
Exactly, yeah.
And when you drop by car, you can have anytime like story with mine, and it's very complicated. But you should be smart, no rush, thinking and be careful, thinking about your life, about your family, and this is very important to stay alive on the battlefield.
Well, that's
It's not
probably the most essential field for the battlefield journalist in general, just to
but it's
make sure you remember to
it's a
stay
high
alive.
risk, do you know?
Indeed, of course.
This is job is a high risk, and if you go to the battlefield, you should to understand one day you may kill. No, you should understand absolutely 100%. You never know. You never know, and what happen with you next minutes.
Well, indeed.
Yeah, because I saw how cars stay, and then explosion from the mine, and it's a few seconds, and you never know.
And in those few seconds, you actually, besides everything else, need to find that right shot that you was looking for.
Yeah, I left my friends on the battlefield, and you speak with him, and then after hours he's died, and this is battlefield.
Oh, thank you for creating this beautiful project. I really hope that
Thank
it
you
will
for
have a
inviting
long
me.
life and tell a lot of people what it really is to be on the battlefield.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes,
Thank
this is
you.
what
Good
I
luck
should do.
with
Good
your
luck.
book.
Thank you so
Ivan.
much. Yes, thank you.
I hope you found that worth watching as much as I did. I'm Mark for Roundtable. Thanks for watching. See you next week.